All right, good afternoon from Books and Books in Coral Gables, Florida. A note to our internet audience watching at home. We are going to be resuming our broadcast at 3:30 with the Florida Grand Opera Meet Susan series. So please tune back in about 25 minutes, and we will have a lecture on Florida Grand Opera as well as performances from the young artists. See you back here live at 3:30. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for coming down on this very, very special Sunday afternoon. We are live from Books and Books in Coral Gables, Florida, so a big hello to our internet audience watching at home. This afternoon, Books and Books, in collaboration with Florida Grand Opera, is honored to present the opera's general director, Ms. Susan T. Danis, and in-house opera expert, Mr. Justin Moss, for a behind-the-scenes look at Florida Grand Opera. We are also going to be favored with the performances from some of the opera's young artists this afternoon. I will let them take it from here. Please welcome to the podium, a very warm welcome to Susan Danis and Justin Moss.
Thank you all. Thank you. It's great to be here and see you coming out in the rain for the likes of us. But we think it'll be a productive afternoon, and it will provide you with an opportunity to leave here knowing a little bit more about Susan Danis than you did when you walked in. Maybe in an opera company more than any other of the art forms, the personality and the tastes of the general director of an opera company come to absolutely define what you enjoy and see on the stage. It's a very, very complex, dense art form with lots of aspects that have to be managed minute by minute, and the product that you end up enjoying is really a direct a product of the taste that the general director of an opera company is exercising. Susan, we're glad to have you
That's
here.
That's a little scary.
It is
Justin.
scary.
I mean, like if anything isn't good, now it's my fault.
It is totally scary, exactly. The buck stops with you, I'm afraid. Tell us where you grew up and what your childhood was like in terms of involvement with the arts. Did you have an arts-rich childhood?
Arts-rich childhood. I was born and raised for my early years in Waterbury, Connecticut, kind of smack in the middle of a state, very much in working-class Connecticut. And I was very fortunate to be a product of arts education. When I went to school, the opera came in, the orchestra came in, the ballet came in. So we had great programs, and I had great exposure very early in life. But I think the thing that was the most profound of looking toward the future, if some of you remember, it's appropriate as we are in a bookstore, there was a book many years ago called Everything I Needed to Learn, I Learned in Kindergarten. Well, I was always one of the kids in the neighborhood putting on plays. You know, we always were putting on plays, trying to raise a couple of dollars and then give it to some charity, just what I do today. But more importantly, I was frequently less on the stage than the person making sure that there was a rope in my garage door so the curtain can go over. So in essence, I was producing when I was like 5 or 6, and guess what? I'm still doing the same thing today. So I was very fortunate. My dad loved musicals, so every Sunday afternoon he would sit in front of the stereo and listen to South Pacific and Camelot and so forth. I didn't really appreciate it at that point, but really my I danced when I was little, I played the French horn, I did a lot of theater work, but mostly a lot of times I really was a producer.
What's your first earliest musical memory that you have of being really touched by a piece of music?
I would say my earliest musical memory, maybe not touch, was my mom loved to whistle, and she was a great whistler.
Wow.
And and when she whistled, I knew she was happy. And, that's important as a kid. And so I do remember my mother just beautifully whistling. Trying to sing, maybe not so much, but her whistling was really quite grand.
What's the first opera you saw?
I was in the 3rd grade. I was in the 3rd level at the Bushnell Auditorium in Hartford, Connecticut, and it was Carmen. And I, of course, knew Carmen because I danced it. If there was more room, I would actually get out and show you my 5th grade. I still remember it to the habanera. I can do every step. If we'd had that wine, maybe I would do it. But I was hooked. As a kid, I could not even comprehend everything that I was seeing, I was listening to, I was watching from a dance perspective. And it's interesting because Carmen was the first opera that I produced when I started a million years ago at the Lake George Opera Festival in upstate New York, which is now Opera Saratoga. And then when I went to Sarasota Opera, even though it wasn't the first opera I produced, it's the first opera I saw. So I unfortunately hear it was Bohème, but that's okay. I can deal with Bohème. But Carmen has a special place in my heart.
You know, they say in New York City that the toughest job is the mayor's. And the second toughest job in the city is running the Metropolitan Opera. It is probably true. And there's probably no job that is more multitask oriented than the general directors of an opera company. That job is really tough on every front. There's another multitasker, though, who appears in an opera that's one of the most popular in the world. I think we should hear his entrance right now. That would be, of course, Figaro from Rossini's Il Barbiere di Sevilla, the Barber of Seville. And we're going to have some music this afternoon. Tessa Hartle will accompany members of our Young Artist Studio. This first piece will be sung by baritone Isaac Bray.
He's coming from the back.
And in this piece, Figaro tells us that he is indeed much, much more than just a barber. He is a marriage broker. He sells real estate. He fixes wigs. He makes arrangements of all manners and kind. And then he very famously discusses how he's completely overwhelmed with more need for his services than he has time to provide them. All over Seville, people are calling Figaro, 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 calling his name and making him just crazy. Here's the Largo al Factotum, the Song of the Servant from the Barber of Seville.
Largo falcone della città, largo. La, presto, bottega, chi la vai già, presto. La. Ah, che bel vivere, che bel piacere, che bel piacere. Per un barbiere di qualità, di qualità. Ah, bravo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, bravo, grazie. La, fortunatissimo per verità, bravo. La, fortunatissimo per verità, fortunatissimo per verità. Pronto far tutto la notte e il giorno, se ne ritorno qui ce lo sta. Il corcagno per un barbiere dai vita più nobile non si dà. Mangia dei forbici rasano i pettini, al mio comando tutto qui sta. Mangia dei forbici rasano i pettini, al mio comando tutto qui sta. E la risorsa poi del mestiere con la donnetta, col cavaliere, con la donnetta, la. Oh, col cavaliere, che bel vivere, che bel piacere, che bel piacere. Per un barbiere di qualità, di qualità. Tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, giovani ragazzi, vecchie fanciulle, con la parrucca, presto la barba, con la sanguigna, presto il biglietto, tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, con la parrucca, presto la barba, presto il biglietto e Figaro, 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 ahimè, ahimè, che foglia, ahimè, che foglia, uno alla volta, per carità, per carità, per carità, uno alla volta, uno alla volta, uno alla volta, per Figaro qua, Figaro là, Figaro qua, Figaro là, Figaro su, Figaro giù, Figaro su, Figaro giù. Moltissimo sono come i fulmini sul factotum della città, della città, della città, della città, della città. Abramo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, abramo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, allevatura, 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 non mancherà, la 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 la. Allevatura, 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 non mancherà. Sono il factotum della città, sono il factotum della città, della città. Della città.
Thank you, Isaac. That was terrific. What a treat, too. And a nice piece to sort of start the afternoon with, I think. Susan, we're just coming off of the Miami performances of Georges Bizet's The Pearl Fishers. And this is a work that we used to see very, very rarely. We've just heard an announcement, though, that the Metropolitan Opera will be doing it next season for the first time since 1916. So after a long absence from the Metropolitan Opera, it'll be back.
It's because of our production.
I think our production gave them the courage to make that decision. Don't you think so? Tell us about your philosophy of looking further afield than just at the 10 most frequently produced operas in the world. You gave us, for your first season here, Morning Becomes Electra, a production I certainly will never forget as long as I live, and an astonishing experience. The Pearl Fishers, what a great experience. We've got some banners right here, too, for something else that you've got up your sleeve.
Up my sleeve.
Tell us about your philosophy of programming these new
Well,
works.
I think that when I talk with opera audiences, they're either of one mind or the other. It's like, give me Barber, Carmen, Butterfly, I can see them again and again and again. Or it's the absolute opposite. Give me anything but Barber, Carmen, whatever. And as I say, I have 4 chances to make all of you happy, and that's tough. I believe Abraham Lincoln was the wisest man ever when he said you can only please some of the people some of the time. But we do like to make sure that you have an opportunity to see lesser-known works of great composers. Many people have seen the Pearl Fishers, but many people had not. Many people told me they were very surprised with how good it was, considering that he was just a mere child of 25 when he wrote it. But the idea being that every year we certainly will have a blockbuster coming up next year, opening the season with The Barber of Seville. Maybe not a blockbuster in size, but certainly a piece that everyone knows. And that we'll always make sure that we have pieces that you know, but we also have a commitment to 2 things. One, bringing 20th century, 21st century work, giving you a chance to experience some new things, and but always looking for things that I do believe will be relevant to the community. This is really the 3rd installment of what we like to call our Made for Miami series. And last year, things that are relevant to things in our community. We have such an incredible community, great diversity, folks who have come from many different places, young, vibrant city, and there are topics that resonate with this community. Last year with Nabucco, it was about the Hebrew slaves that were exiled from their homeland. Many people in this community have been exiled from their homeland, and I always say the Va Pensiero chorus should actually be the city song for Miami, because it really does tell a journey that many, many people in this community have taken. And this year with doing the console, again, talking about this unnamed Eastern European place, about the despair and what someone is trying to go through to be able to change their situation, make a better life for themselves, but not being able to do that, and sitting in the consulate's office, and regardless of your social strata, whether you're a rich woman or a poor woman, not being able to change where you are. And so I do believe in things that take you on a journey. It's great to come out humming, and that's why there'll always be an opera or 2 that you will. But I do think there'll be some operas that will take you a bit more on a journey, and stretch us all a little bit as a group.
Terrific. I personally am so looking forward to seeing the console. I've never seen it in my life, and I know some of the music, and some of the music is very, very famous, but it was a huge hit in 1950.
On Broadway.
And on Broadway, it ran for 269 performances, which is huge for a new opera, an operatic work. It's arguably the best piece Menotti ever did, and it's really a huge opportunity to relive this experience and see this show that really moved so many people then and continues to do so today. I think it would be fun for us to hear a little piece of music from the first opera you ever produced.
Absolutely,
never
too much.
Which is Georges Bizet's other opera. We're caught up in the Pearl Fisher, so Carmen has become his other opera. But I think we have a bass baritone Chance Aiken who will sing Escamillo's aria for us from Carmen. Escamillo is a bullfighter, but he's actually a rock star.
Yeah.
And these guys became so famous and so popular that they were treated as huge celebrities, rock stars. Escamillo comes in, and if we had or harbored any doubts about how important, handsome, and successful he was, he puts our minds to rest because he tells us just how much of all those things he is.
Votre toast, je peux vous le rendre, signor, signor, madame les soldats. Oui, les toreros, reste attendre, pour plaisir, ils ont les combats. Le sire de plat, c'est jour de fête, le sire de plat, du autrefois. Les spectateurs perdent la tête, les spectateurs s'interpellent à la flamme. Apostrophe, prise et dommage, jusqu'à la fureur, car c'est la fête du courage, c'est la fête des gens de Paris. Alors, en garde, alors,
Very nice. Well, we're sort of getting into a little bit of a French mood now. You've got a French connection, Susan. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and the years you spent living in Paris? I am so jealous.
Je suis française. I always find it strange that in this melting pot of America that both of my parents were of French descent and that they met and were married. So I come from a line of Duvals and Dubois and Monvilles and Saint-Chagrin. I mean, so both of my parents are of French descent, and my brother and I are the first generation they didn't send to French school, but I can remember my grandmother, one of my grandmothers just virtually not really speaking English all that well. And some of the family did the trek from France here, but some went, actually one part of my lineage went to Sorel, Quebec before the 1800, and then eventually made their way down through New England. So I am indeed French. Very proud of it too, even though people like to say otherwise. I had the great fortune of I kind of have come from a kind of an interesting place. I went to Indiana University, one of the biggest music schools. However, I was not in the music school. I actually graduated with a degree in drama therapy. It is an interesting journey because the psych school didn't want me because I didn't take Rat Lab, and the theater school didn't want me because I really wasn't going to be an actor. But it's where drama is basically used as therapeutic milieu to work with people with disabilities. I've worked with every disability. I've worked with incarcerated, I've worked with criminally insane, you name it. I always say it prepares me to work with artists. I'm joking. Not opera singers, though, not opera singers. So, no, not at all. Not at all. No histrionic personality disorders or anything. So look that up. You might find some things you realize. But I was in New York. I kind of been there for 10 years, and I had this big idea that I was just going to become this big corporate person, and leave not-for-profit. So, but first I decided I was going to go to France for a year and become a bum and just kind of hang out. I saved enough money. But being that I graduated from overachievers versus underachievers, I found a 13-month intensive MBA program in Paris. And so while I was living in Paris, I got my MBA. And the part that Justin's referring to, I joke because, giving away my age, I didn't tell him to go to school. When I was living in Paris, they were building the Bastille, the new opera house. I lived right around the corner. And every morning, the workmen would start, and I'd curse them because, of course, they'd be making all this noise, and I wanted to sleep in because I was up late or whatever. But I lived in the La Boheme garret. I lived in a maid's quarters on a 5th floor walk-up, and 5 French is really 6, and the stairs are this long, and I had one of those big windows. So I remember the first time that I saw La Boheme, I was like, yeah, places really do look like that. My place was about that big. But it was a wonderful, I was there for almost 2 years, and it was really a wonderful opportunity, and it is absolutely my favorite city in the world.
Sigh. I told you, I was jealous, and I still am. But it sounds like it's wonderful, and also just to have that kind of an intensive introduction to the different culture, a lot of stuff that just doesn't rub off on you
right.
over a 7-day visit. You know,
absolutely.
You really need to be fully immersed in it. So let's fully immerse ourselves in it. Puccini's magnificent La Boheme, taking place in Paris. We'll have Musetta's Waltz. This is from the second act of La Boheme. Musetta has gone to the Café Momus with an elderly gentleman on her arm, and there she sees her ex-boyfriend. They've had a dust-up and have separated, but he's sitting there in the cafe, studiously avoiding her. He refuses to look at her, pay any attention, and she gets more and more jealous until she finally pops. Jumps up and sings this song, Quando me invo. When I go out on the streets, dressed up like this in all of my finery, I can literally feel people looking me over from head to toe. Haley Clark.
We'll just sit down now.
I know. Thank you, Haley. That's a real tough act to follow.
Really? We'll just sit down.
Susan, tell us the truth now. Did you ever sing?
That's so scary. Did I? Yes, I always say that I
Did you ever sing?
sing in smoky jazz bars or with the baritones, given my voice. I did. When I was a kid, I took voice lessons and I did sing for a while. But I knew you have to know what you're good at, you know. So no, actually, I still do really enjoy singing, but obviously I'm in the lower registers, you know. So.
And did you play a musical instrument?
I did. I played the French horn. I played when they had the really heavy cases. You know, now they have these really cool French horn things. You just put them on your back, so I'd have to, you know, schlep it to grammar school. And I just decided. I played into high school, and then I got asked. This was before there, you know, even were as many girls teams as there were boys. I got asked to manage the boys track team, and that was far more, you know, a junior in high school, it was far more interesting than playing French horn. So I kind of went. So.
But that's a nice, interesting musical background. So
Absolutely.
Of course, that enabled you to read music and all of that. Let's go a little bit more personal with you and ask, like, do you like to cook?
Yeah, I do. I love to cook. Not that I get too much. I say that when I go into my kitchen, all my pots and pans are like, "Hi, remember me? Remember me?" I actually, it's a funny story. It's way too long to tell, but if I get to talk to you personally, I also took cooking lessons for 1 semester while I was living in Paris. So, and it was done in French. I pretty much learned the sauce pyramid, and it was totally traditional. And then the day that I had to, it was it was in the 20th arrondissement. It was kind of in the outskirts of Paris. And the day that I had to chase the chicken, pluck the chicken, I decided that my econometrics class looked really much better. So, no, actually, I really do love to cook. I haven't been doing it anywhere near what I normally did. I cook when I'm stressed, so it's kind of been a joke with some of my friends, are we coming to dinner on Sunday if I had a bad week? But I tend to be in things like this now.
None of us at the opera are home long enough to cook. It's
Exactly.
just really sad, and our pots and pans do, you know, beckon. Come on, guys. You've ignored me for weeks and weeks. What's your favorite meal? If you could have brought to you anything at all in the world to eat, what thing would you quickly want to order?
I don't know. That's tough because I could go everywhere from some really super complicated meal to a really good pizza. You know, I mean, there are things that I love that are, I especially love French food, but sometimes the simplicity of a good pizza margherita is not such a bad thing.
You're absolutely right. We have great pizza here in Miami, too. And, you know, I could name off several places, but I'm not on a retainer with any of them, so I will not. But I will
contribute to the opera. Will be okay.
I will look. I can contribute that to the opera, of course. We're on a sort of French roll right now, so I think we should hear something else French from Jacques Offenbach's magnificent Les Contes d'Hoffmann, The Tales of Hoffmann. We have the Barcarolle, and Rebecca Enriquez and Kirsten Scott will perform this for us. This opens the Venice act, if you will, of the Tales of Hoffmann. And we have, if you ladies would get up so I can point you out to our audience, Rebecca, who's closest to me, will sing the part of Juliette, who is a courtesan, a woman of the night, really, in many respects. And Kirsten will sing the role of Niklaus. Niklaus is a trouser role, and he is the companion of Hoffmann. And the two of these guys find themselves in a gondola under the stars, and of course, no city is more rife with opportunity for just everything than Venice. This is a famous, famous melody that every one of you has heard before. The Barcarolle. Thank you, ladies. That was really terrific. Is there anyone in the room who has never heard that music before? That's what I told you. I know, it's great. You hear it in elevators, in the grocery store, and it's you know, for a reason that music becomes so ubiquitous, really. We just are coming off of a really wonderful production of Mozart's Così fan tutte. And a couple of the artists who performed some of those shows for us are sitting right here, singing for us today. Tell us about your relationship with Mozart, Susan. You know, there are people who like him, and there are other people who try to avoid him, and for, I think, all of the wrong reasons, personally. But tell us about your own relationship with Mozart.
Well, I talk to him every day now. The artistic director in Sarasota, Victor Dorenzi, if you've been to Sarasota, is quite a character. And he, even though he was raised incredibly Catholic, he takes great pride in saying that he's an atheist now. And the reason why is because if there was a God, Mozart would still be alive. And obviously not a true statement, but just talking about the power of his music. I certainly feel that way. I think that there are, in Così fan tutte, which I happen to love, many people don't like, but I happen to love it, and all of you that were in it were fantastic. Thank you very much. But sometimes there's some music in Mozart that is just so beautiful and so simple and so pure that it just takes me to another place. And I think that there are many opera composers, it raises many emotions in us, but this is one that it's heavenly. It's probably my best description of it. So love Mozart both operatically and all of his other music as well, but absolutely one of my favorite composers for sure.
Well, that's good to hear. I have to tell you, for me, the Mozart, the Così production we did so moved me, and I just thought that musically there was so much integrity in that production. It just made me so happy. I sat through almost every single performance and really felt hugely enriched. It's not like I've never seen this show before. I can't tell you how many productions, but every time I revisit it, I learn so much new stuff and hear things I think, how could I have missed that before? And of course there are changes in every production, but also it just is so rich, it takes that much exposure. I think we should hear some Mozart right now, don't you?
No time like the present.
No time like the present. Let's hear the little duet from Don Giovanni. And this is a great, great scene. Would our practitioners come up? We will, of course, have Haley Clark singing the role of Zerlina, a young peasant girl, really. Chance Aiken will be singing the role of the Dawn. This magnificent scene occurs early in the opera. Zerlina is going to be married right that day to her lovely fiancé Mazzetto, and she's on her way to the church in all of her wedding finery. She is espied by Don Juan. Don Giovanni, never one to ignore a pretty girl, interjects himself into her path, pulls her aside, and eventually says, "Give me your hand, la ci darem la mano. Look at that villa up on the hillside. It's mine. Let's go." On the way to the church to marry her fiancé, she comes within a whisker of doing it, and only at the last minute, the appearance of Donna Elvira saves her. Here's this charming, charming duet.
Andiamo
Haley Clark and Chance Aiken, thank you very much. It was just lovely. Don't do it, Zerlina. He's no good. Susan, we should ask you, everyone in this business has stories of the craziness we all endure, and it's stuff that you really couldn't make up. And I really do have 2 or 3 books in me for my old age that I think I'll get out there. Do you have any favorite stories of backstage or on stage insanity that you might like to share with us?
There are so many. A couple. I remember once in Sarasota we were doing a Fledermaus, and the leading lady's warming up. We walk by, everything's fine. We walk out the door. Victor and I, we would never leave the theater, just like here. We don't leave the theater when there's a performance. We're always in the theater. But we just decided, we just went right across the street to grab a bite to eat. And she went out on stage and nothing came out. And so in Sarasota, because same thing here to the greatest extent, but because we do 12 or 13 performances of things often that weren't part of standard repertoire, the young artists, the studio artists there would always be understudies. So she was in the theater, thank goodness. She wasn't even like in the apartments, which are quite close. Down into the pit, she went, sang from the pit for the first act, and the principal artist walked the role, and then during intermission, her dress was a really expensive dress. There was the entire wardrobe staff, because principal was like here and the studio artist was like here, and anybody who could use needle and thread were there trying to like get it hemmed up. It's just pandemonium. But the minute that the studio artist walked out on stage, the audience just erupted, because it's like it's not the underdog, but it's the person who's getting their chance. And I think that I would actually, for the sake of the studio artists, love when the principals couldn't go on, because I'd get to go out on stage and say that they got to go on, and you could feel the energy in the opera house would be palpable of the excitement that someone else got a chance to go on and do that role. So I loved that. Plenty on the crazy production side, but one of my favorites, we haven't had too many mishaps. I'm not here long enough. We've had a couple of things here, but as we've just finished Hoffmann, it's perfect. In the last act of a production we did in Sarasota, the doctor at the end, in a big effect, would set off this pyro, and so there was a little bit of a flame and big smoke, and I don't even know if Brad Garvin's still singing, but he's the one who sang it. He stepped backwards into this false fireplace, and he would just like step backwards, and the smoke effect would go off, and he was very like flexible, and he would just disappear. Well, one night when he let it off too close to the side of the fireplace. Now, of course, because he went underneath it, it's just a piece of fabric, and the fabric caught on fire. And so the rest of the opera is continuing, and all of a sudden you see these hands coming out, going like this, like trying to put out the fire. So, there's a little bit of everything that happens. We did a Werther once when, in the last act, he's on a track, and it's supposed to kind of roll down stage. So he's more in the light. It was an opening night performance, and it didn't roll down stage. So of course, all the designers are sitting in the audience. The lighting designer, tech, everyone runs backstage, and he's wailing away as Werther does, and all you can hear is like they have to release it because it got stuck on the track. So in the middle of all the music, you're hearing zzz, 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 and they had to release him so he could go down stage and be in the light. But then they pushed him a little too far, so he kind of went flying out, and you virtually could see him holding onto the sides of the mattress so he didn't get catapulted into the audience. So it's live theater, it's
and it's true, you couldn't make this stuff up.
Yeah,
it really happens all the time. Do you have any really special and memorable moments in the opera, both from maybe a performance you attended that you weren't responsible for? Those are often a lot of fun. when you're not working, and also maybe a memorable moment from something that you actually did produce that you would like to share with us.
Well, the memorable for what I produced, I have many fond memories, but for me, I always say that if I get knocked over and the proverbial bus hits me, whether folks liked it or not, I'm really, really proud that we did Morning Becomes Electra. Thank you. That Marvin David Levy, who unfortunately just recently died, to get to work with Marvin, who should have been a Borscht Belt comic if he wasn't a composer, to be able to cast with him, to get Laura Flanagan to come out of retirement to reprise the role. One of our board members once said that I've seen a million Bohèmes and I probably won't remember them, but I'll never forget this opera. And it's certainly, some people hated it, but I think they were just like tour de force performances. The orchestra played beautifully. To have Marvin a part of it was just really, really spectacular. I couldn't even begin to pick out the things that I've seen. I mean, I think probably. Are you trying to steer me towards that?
I am.
Okay.
Take the bait.
Okay, I'm taking it. Well, there are a lot. I think getting a chance to sit in different opera houses, for sure. I saw Tristan and Isolde at the Met that was beyond belief. Certainly lots of our performances when singers just have really incredible moments on stage during a big aria or whatever. But what Justin's trying to lead me to for the setup is I love Strauss and I love Der Rosenkavalier, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to do it here. I know I won't have to twist Julie's arm. Julie loves it as well. And the first time I saw it, it was really horrible because I had to watch it from the first row in the Vienna Opera House. So it was pretty magical to be in that house to see Rosenkavalier. So one of my many memories.
I love it too. Let's hear some.
Okay, sounds
right
good.
now. Okay. Richard Strauss, Der Rosenkavalier. The opera concludes with one of the most magnificent trios in all of operatic literature. And ladies who are going to perform this, if you would come forward so I can point out the roles you're going to perform. Kristen Scott will be singing the title role of the Rosenkavalier, the bearer of the rose. He is a probably 16 or 17-year-old young man, a distant cousin of the wife of the field marshal. Field marshals are away a lot, and this has provided an opportunity for the Marschallin, his wife, to conduct an illicit affair with her distant cousin, Octavian. Singing the role of Sophie, a young girl to whom Octavian has been enlisted to present a rose signifying her engagement to marry a first cousin of the Marschallins. Of course, when the two young people, Sophie, sung by Rebecca Enriquez, and Octavian, sung by Kristen Scott, when the two young people meet, they fall in love. And of course, this is the very conclusion of a very, very long but magnificent opera. And this trio begins with the Marschallin singing, "I always knew that I would lose him, but I never believed I would have to deal with it so soon. There's the boy, there's the girl. They're going to be as happy as anyone in the world." Octavian is staggered at her generosity and her graciousness, and Sophie is nuts in that this was potentially a hugely perilous encounter, but it's all worked out really, really well, and she's just flipped over Octavian. She's so much in love, and that the Marschallin has handed him over. We'll hear this trio that concludes Richard Strauss's Der Rosenkavalier.
Oh
Rebecca Enriquez, Betsy Diaz, and Kirsten Scott, accompanied by Tessa Hartle. What a magnificent piece of music. Man, just really insane. I think it'd be good to take the last few minutes we have, though, to provide you with an opportunity to torment Susan with questions you may have. I think she'll try to respond to them honestly and straightforwardly. So I'll be happy to take the first question that someone may have for Susan. About the company, about herself, about her plans. I have a question right here. Yes, sir.
What's the soonest you can do Carmen?
What's the soonest we can do Carmen?
Actually, it is technically slotted for the following season, 16-17. We could probably do it every year. I really do think. I recently had a colleague who suggested to me, could Carmen become the Nutcracker of the opera world? Because most ballet companies do the Nutcracker every year, and it doesn't matter. Everybody comes out and sees it. It becomes a tradition. So he actually was proposing that we consider doing that with Carmen, and then like change out the casting and so forth. So I actually think it's a pretty good idea.
Viable. Absolutely. Other questions? Yes, sir.
How long have you been in the business exactly in the opera period?
How long have I been in the opera business? I started at the Lake George Opera in 1990. So long time. Yes, ma'am.
I was talking to the ladies outside already, but I'd like you to extend it a little bit. I'd like to know why next season has only 2 operas at the Broward Center. Because if you know that it's so very difficult to get the dates for you, why don't, like the people that rearrange the dates, start much earlier than in Europe?
The question's about why we only have two slots at the Broward Center. Well, there are about a million reasons why, but first of all, we have an amazing relationship with the Broward Center. The Broward Center is one of the top 5 subscribed Broadway houses in America. Meaning that the road shows that go through, if you look at the Broadway schedule at the Arsht Center, it's at Arsht for 1 week. It's in Broward for 2 weeks. And the planning with Broadway comes first because the Broward Center has to stay viable, and very much their model is an earned revenue model. Most of their funding comes from, as I look back at Judith Carney, who's part of their development team, who's smiling at me, so I know I'm getting it right. Most of their income comes from ticket sales, whereas in Miami, the Arch Center gets a huge chunk of their budget from the county every year, thanks to all of you paying your taxes and so forth. So Broadway has to come first. We have to match up the operas. So even this year, the first 2 operas, Così fan tutte and Butterfly in the fall, there was a dead week. So normally what happens is, like what's happening right now, is Kevin, our director of production, is loading the Pearl Fishers as we speak. Well, they may be done out of the Arch Center, and it's going straight to Broward, and we will perform next Thursday and Friday at Broward. But the last 2 operas, it was a whole week that was dead. So we have to, first of all, get singers who are willing to stay for a week. Of course, if it's the middle of the winter and you live in New York, it's not a bad place to be. But you could potentially be missing some other work. We actually have to compensate them for their per diem while they're here because they're waiting. And there just was no way that the operas only 2 next year could connect. With all those other factors, with Broadway, with a myriad of different factors, it's the very best that we could do with the Broward Center because we have so many moving parts. We have to deal with the ARS schedule. We have to deal with their schedule, and so that's the best we could do. The goal is to obviously hope that it will get better in the future, but for this year, that's the way the plan's aligned, and it's all we can do. And it's only 45 minutes down here. It's not that far, and we even starting with the console, there will be bus service for folks who don't want to make the drive. You'll be seeing information about that. We'll do our very best to try to make sure you can get here.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any Wagner on the schedule? Actually, we were joking recently because we were given a Lohengrin set from Dallas Opera, and San Francisco Opera is trying to pawn off their Tannhäuser. So we thought, we might as well go up against Bayreuth and have a summer Wagner festival. My staff is looking at me like, you've got to be crazy. We're not doing Wagner in the summer. It's on the docket. It's just like when the Tristan started. It's incredibly, incredibly expensive. and the amount of time we need for the orchestra, the capacity and the capability of the singers, the size of the orchestra. So if you know anybody who has $1 million that'd like to underwrite a production, it'll go way up in that schedule much quicker.
Send them our way.
An abridged version. Well, there's a small company in Pittsburgh that actually has a 45-minute version of The Ring. They do. If you probably even find it online. It's the Opera Theater of Pittsburgh. They have a 45-minute Ring. Yes, Felix.
Are we going to have Please Don't Let Me Sold there because it was canceled?
Yes.
Is it going to come back?
Yeah, when I have my $1 million. Okay?
That's what we thought.
It's easy. I have money, get the opera you want. It's a really simple formula. You want Andrea Chenier? Find me $1 million. You'll have Andrea Chenier. La Gioconda, we might need a little more because it's big.
You could sing any role. Now, give any kind of role, what would you sing?
What role am I most like, or what would I like to sing?
Both. I like
Okay, I'm Tosca for sure. All the things that she is, that's me. Any role that I'd like to sing? Probably something big and huge. Maybe like the Marshland, something from Rosencavalier for sure. Something from Rosencavalier, because it's just so gorgeous, so beautiful.
What about some more French operas?
Like I said, she asked what about more French operas. It's the challenge. I've got 4 operas to make you all happy, and
Not the same.
that's pardon.
Not the same, like Carmen, or just new ones.
Yeah,
Romeo and Juliet, or
we just did Romeo and Juliet in
seasons ago.
11, yeah, 12, yeah. Oh yes, Péléas and Melisande.
We just did Thais, yeah, which is wonderful.
Yes, after so many years, yes.
Yes, sir.
How do Florida Grand Opera revenues compare today to, say, 8 or 9 years ago, and how do you explain the difference?
Well, first of all, I can only give you perspective of what the numbers say because I wasn't here. They're incredibly different, very different. If you saw any of the presentations about our campaign and so forth, since the opera company moved into the Arts Center, it's not that it was a causal factor, but since 2006, the opera took on almost $20 million worth of debt to stay alive. And I think it's a combination of factors. We do live in the market that suffered the greatest housing crisis in America, and we're kind of coming out. But are we really? I'm not seeing any big, huge upswing in contributions. The certainly moving to the Arch the first year, the budget was about 14 million, and when the first year in the Arch it went to 22, and the opera company lost $9 million that year. So it's, and there really wasn't too much of a philosophy of pulling back. And so things kind of stayed not quite at that level of funding. But part of the reason that this, people have said to me, oh, this season I just saw Cozy, whatever. We cut $2 million out of the budget. We went from 10.5 to 8.6 this year because we had to, because that's where our revenues were projected to come in. This isn't my dream season. I know you all saw the Pearl Fishers and Così fan tutte in 2008, but it was what we could come up with. The senior team, Julie being over there, and Justin and the rest of us, we sat around a board table for weeks trying to find a season that would work.
Weeks.
And I think we were on budget version M or N, and this is what we could afford this year. Our tickets only cover, your seat covers 36% of the cost. That's it. So the rest of it has to come from your contributions, which every contribution matters. If you can just go a little higher, it's going to make a difference for the company. Every contribution matters. $1 million that I joke about matters, but if you're a $100 donor or a $1,000 donor, it all matters. It all makes a difference. So I think that it's some of the economic conditions. We've done some re-strategizing in terms of how do we produce more efficiently. It's tough because we have so many fixed costs. The 2 performing arts halls are about $1.5 million of our budget to use them. So that's a lot on an $8.5 million budget. So there are some costs we just can't change. We have unions, so we have fixed stagehand costs and so forth. But it's expensive to produce opera in Miami, we need to continue to try to grow our audience because usually people start coming and then hopefully they like what they see and they start giving. So we're trying some new things. I'm very much trying to deal with things that I was left and try to keep the company moving forward.
And every day that we're still in business is a victory.
Yes. I wish I could say that was a lie, right? This librettist, Sandy McClatchy, and I both said, I don't know who said it first, but I do really believe the only thing more expensive than opera is war. That's it. Just war. Because we have everything. Yes, Susan.
Are you going to produce any early operas, Monteverdi or Gluck?
We haven't really talked about it for the near future. I don't have anything against it, but early. It hasn't really. We throw it around occasionally, but I don't get a lot. I can tell you that we're doing Norma next year because that is the opera in my 2.5 years that I've heard people ask for the most, like repeatedly. So if you get a whole group going about early opera, you never know. Yes, in the back.
You mentioned that you were highly influenced by opera in your earlier years through education. I'm a teacher, and for me, my grandmother was my first teacher with opera. She actually taught me Italian. She used to sing opera in Cuba. Have you seen a recent interest in opera among young students? And if not, what are you doing to promote and engender that interest?
We have a huge program we do educational programs from library and preschoolers all the way up through adult ed. We have a program called Read Along, Sing Along that's in libraries throughout both counties. We do programs called Informances where folks have had a chance to go right into the classroom, perform and work with students. This year you guys have been doing the telephone, right? How many schools? How many schools have you hit? Right, at least a dozen schools with a small performance of Menotti's The Telephone. Last year we partnered with Orchestra Miami and went into some of the most underserved schools throughout the county with a piece called Mice Wars. And in addition, we have an amazing patron who is absolutely determined that every student in a Miami-Dade public and private school will see an opera before they graduate. So he pays for all the buses and all the extra costs for the front of the house. And so, he deserves a round of applause and an extension. And so thank you back to teachers that are so committed that they will go back to school at night because our dress rehearsals are at night, and go back and meet their students at the school and then come to the Arts Center to be able to see a dress rehearsal. So we're more than happy to give you some information about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Have you ever been to Italy, one of the opera houses over there in your career?
Yes, I have.
I'd like to compliment you for the career you had. We're from Italy, but we have never been able to afford to go to opera houses over there, which are extremely expensive. Thanks to you or all the staff, anyway, we've been able to go to opera over here in Miami.
Thank you. Glad you come.
Encourages us to raise it.
Exactly.
Probably time for one more question, I think, and then we'll be done. Do you have
just a comment on opera in America in the future? When I was young, Met trafficking was
right.
We didn't have a little opera.
Right.
Now they've gone the other way. They're broadcasting, and yet there's so many wonderful opera companies. Can we sustain it, or where are we going to be in 10 years?
Where's opera going to be in 10 years? It's a big question that many of us debate. You're right. The Met toured for years in some of the cities where they were most popular, like a city like Atlanta, for example. It's a big population base. It probably should have a bigger opera company, but really the Met had the stronghold there. The HD broadcasts have a mixed effect on some communities. Some communities there's no effect at all. When we were in Sarasota, we lost 13% of our subscriber base to the movies. So because people, you can go casual, you can get up and go to the restroom, whatever. I think what's my sense, and this is being totally honest, is that we're going to end up with two kinds of companies in America. There are going to be mega companies, and there are going to be small companies. And unless something dramatically changes with giving and attendance, the middle is going to drop out of the market. And that scares me because all these guys need to work for a living, and less opportunity isn't a good thing. So, wherever you are, to whatever extent you can support your company, it's not just about, you obviously get to see it, but it supports livelihoods, and it has incredible economic impact. We are the largest employer of stagehands in Miami-Dade after the convention center. So if we do less, there's less food on people's tables, or not a new bike this year, but next year. So
Fewer kids in college.
Yeah, it's really important for the economic engine of the community as well.
Thank you very much, Susan. This is really, really informative. And I'd like to say one final thing before turning it back to Victor. We have literature on the tables, a tremendous offer of a 20% discount for tickets for our upcoming production of The Consul. Bring your friends. Do not miss it. I believe the production will be one of those experiences that you will never forget, and well worth it. Take advantage of the special offer. Be sure to see it, and be sure to encourage your friends as well. Thank you very much. You've been great.
All right. Well, we love having Florida Grand Opera come down on these Sunday afternoons for a performance. Please note, you opera fans, that down at the Arsht Center, we have a new Books and Books restaurant and bookstore. So when you go down to see an opera, you could have dinner with us, and you can go home with a book. I want to thank Susan Danis and Justin Moss for being with us this afternoon. The reception you were enjoying on the west side, we now have it set up in the back of this room. So when we're all done, if you folded your chairs and stacked it against the wall, you could continue receptioning. But most important, please give a big hand for our performances this afternoon. Thanks very much.